Wonderful. So thanks for coming today. Those of you who are on my email list, you probably know who I am. I'm not sure how much you know about me. Some of us have been working with each other for a while. Some of us, maybe we're just getting acquainted on LinkedIn. So as you may know, I'm a cash flow coach. I help healers heal the world by increasing cash flow and increasing their impact, one clinic at a time. So what that means is I help naturopathic doctors, acupuncturists, health coaches, all sorts of holistic health and wellness professionals to become better in their business. So today we're going to be talking about pricing, which is a highly charged subject. I got to admit, this was probably the most difficult subject for me to approach when I first became an entrepreneur. It's like, man, how the heck do I set my prices? It's like I never had to do that before. And it seemed like a simple thing, but it ended up being really a lot of work. And when I say work, I'm going to say it was a lot of inner work. There's a lot of mindset work that needs to be done in order for us to find our, not for everybody, but I find for those of us who are heart-based entrepreneurs and maybe have an inclination to want to be generous and giving, it can be a bit of an effort to find a balanced, well-boundaried way of holding our pricing structure. So we're going to approach that today. And this came out of a little bit of research that I've done. You know, those of you who are here, there may be some of you here who I actually hopped on market research calls with. I, probably did about 20, 25 calls with different people here in the holistic wellness and health world. And I really wanted to find out what folks were really struggling with, because I know this is not an easy game for those of us who come from a clinical background. You know, I started my holistic health education and I was studying Ayurveda and somatic therapy. And when I graduated from my Ayurveda health counselor certification, there wasn't a lot of business support available. And we didn't get a lot of business training in that program. And being in the field for a while, I see that this is actually a common problem for a lot of other functional health professionals. So there's a lot of support that's needed in the business side of things for clinics and for solo clinicians. These are some of the common challenges that I found people mentioning to me in these conversations. Number one, how do we earn a comfortable living with a health and wellness service, right? You may have spent tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars collecting these vital skills to help the world. How do we turn that into a living? How do we make that so you can support yourself comfortably? Number two, people found in general a decent amount of discomfort around money, around pricing in particular, around marketing ourselves, putting our message out there to the world on various platforms, social media, etc. And with selling, to be able to sell our services and enroll people into our services. Number three, folks, there are a number of folks out there who are running practices and having clientele and busy, yet not earning enough to support some of the larger life goals that they hold, like being able to have time during the year for travel or perhaps international travel, maybe being able to pay a down payment for a home, any number of other things. I found this to be a pattern as well, that a lot of folks are overworking and maybe, like I said before, leaning in the direction of maybe overgiving and barely making ends meet. Again, this isn't everybody, but this is just a bit of a theme or a trend that I've been noticing. And number five, spreadsheets. We all know in business that at some point we need to know our numbers, right, in order to be able to run our businesses more effectively. Yet sometimes some of the people I talk to, and I kind of say this with a chuckle, but I can also empathize that spreadsheets can actually make somebody hyperventilate. It can be really difficult to look at the numbers or to be able to see it laid out in a certain way. So maybe you don't even know where to begin. So that's a common, I've actually heard a couple people mention that actually. So number six, you're spread thin, unsure what to prioritize. You may have a lot of demands on your time. And there may be a lot of things that you need and can and maybe should do as a small business owner. Yet there's only so much time in the day. You only have so much energy. So what's going to make the highest impact in your business at any given time? And sometimes it's not so clear what that is. So pricing, I find, actually connects to all of these things. It may not be the main thing, but by dialing in the pricing, this can actually be the shortest path to a sustainable business model. Now, I would love to hear from you in chat. Throw in chat if you've ever struggled with your pricing. Maybe just write pricing in chat if that has been a struggle for you, right? Okay, so in today's presentation, I hope you're going to come away with some tools that are going to make that at least a couple degrees easier for you. Okay, so here we go. Let's start by laying the energetic foundation. Like, what is this all about? Why are we in business in the first place, right? So here we're looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is like Psychology 101. I'm sure you as health and wellness professionals are familiar with this. Okay, the premise here is that our survival needs must be met in order for us to experience higher levels of fulfillment in our life. You know, the levels of fulfillment that we might get through society, through family, through human relationships and connection, like social belonging, through achieving certain positions in society, fulfilling maybe a purpose within our community, within you know, maybe a role we play in the world toward positive change. So there's a degree of self-actualization here as well. That can be, you know, fulfilling our purpose, you know, towards some of these other responsibilities. It could be fulfilling a spiritual purpose, right? So I just want to mention this because I actually didn't learn this until just a couple months ago, that Maslow actually borrowed this framework from the Blackfoot tribe. And, you know, for them, it wasn't self-actualization or the actualization of the individual. It was actually of the collective, of the group. So I just thought that was interesting, kind of a nice trivia fact. Regardless, I find that there's a very common pattern here between Maslow's hierarchy and the four aims, according to the yoga tradition. So if you're a yoga professional or an Ayurveda professional, I know we have some Ayurveda folks here with us today, you're going to recognize this. This is a framework that you're familiar with. And if not, I think this is going to be pretty common sense. So in order to fulfill like a spiritual purpose, we're going to work backwards here. In order to like fulfill like the pinnacle experience of our life, whether it's a spiritual purpose or unfolding our full potential as a human being, in order to fulfill our, you know, our obligations, our responsibilities towards our family, or towards our society, towards a political party, if you identify in that way, towards any other groups or people or movements that you're a part of, in order to pursue your passions in life, we need to have a solid foundation, right? So that solid foundation that we're talking about here is resources. What are resources? It's interesting. So I translated this four aims from the yoga tradition into English words, but these English words really don't do justice to the depth of the concept here. But the Sanskrit word for resources is artha. And artha has a multiplicity of meanings. So it can mean resources, it could be finances, money, wealth. So it means all of those things. If we don't have sufficient resources, then our higher purpose, our ability to live passionately in our life is jeopardized, right? So insufficient, a deficiency in our resources will actually lead to a misalignment and imbalance in our lives, right? So this is why it's really important for us to approach this energetic foundation of getting good with money, right? Getting good with these various aspects in our business that money connects to. Okay, so we're talking about inner money work. You know, the reality is we look at money as a quantitative thing. We can count it, right? Yes, but it really is maybe even more so an emotional subject, right? Money connects to values, and values carry emotion with them. So finding right relationship with money, with work, and with business is critical in order to be able to run our businesses, to live a fulfilled life. So let's start by just identifying, what is my money story? What is a money story in the first place? If you can think back, like really kind of going back, what are your first early life experiences with money? What is your first memory with money? If you can just kind of close your eyes and think back to that. And I can, you know, the first time that I did this exercise, I remembered back to an experience where it's like, wow, I can see how subconsciously I formulated some conclusions without even really being aware of it about what money does to people or what money can mean, right? So think back. And as you're going through this history, think back to some of the other, some of the other key points in the plot of the story of your life with money, right? Like, what do these experiences, what impact did they have on formulating your relationship, your attitudes, your beliefs around money? And it may be early life, it may be later in life. But it's interesting, people who are in the psychology field recognize that oftentimes our attitudes around money are developed very, very early on, and may actually be inherited from our parents, from our lineage. So there's a lot to unpack there. So we're just kind of scratching the surface here. But another key part of the inner money work is having a clear understanding of what our needs are. And of course, our needs are attached to an emotional component as well. What are our comforts? What are our desires? What are your dreams? What are your aspirations, right? Being aware of all these things is going to help us navigate our businesses more effectively. A lot of this is actually based on my learnings from Barry Tussler. Barry Tussler is actually a financial therapist who worked as a bookkeeper, interestingly, when she was first starting her career and paying off her student debt. And she's merged those two fields in a wonderful way. I find it incredibly inspiring. And I would say it's a wonderful resource for anybody who's willing to approach this subject of deep money work. So I'm going to, now that we have a little bit of that context, that energetic foundation, because money can be a delicate subject. And I know that when we're talking about pricing, it can bring things up for people, right? But I want to gently present to you some of the reasons why I think it may be in your interest to at least consider charging more for your services. Okay, so let's step into this. If you were to charge higher prices for your services with your clients or patients, do you think they'll be a little bit more committed to following through with what you're recommending to them? Maybe. Do you think that's possible? Have you seen that in your experience before? Write in chat that higher, I can't ask you to write this whole thing, but say yes in chat if you've noticed that higher prices yield higher levels of commitment from your patients or your clients. Let me know. Okay. So what does higher commitment lead to? A higher commitment leads to better outcomes, right? So better outcomes mean that it's going to be more enjoyable for them. Maybe not more enjoyable, but they're going to find more satisfaction from the work they're doing with you. They're going to be happy with those results. It's probably going to be easier for you to support them and enjoyable for you to see and benefit vicariously from the transformation that they're going through. You're going to be satisfied from that, right? So are we seeing how this is connecting? So better outcomes, when they're satisfied with their work, they become raving fans, or they can become raving fans for your business, where they do the marketing for you. It's the best marketing strategy out there, the strategy of preeminence. This is what Jay Abraham calls the strategy of preeminence, where rather than trying to find 1,000 clients through marketing efforts, what if you were to get 10 raving fan clients to talk about you with 100 of their people? That will also get you to 1,000 clients, right? Potentially. Okay, so that's kind of this geometric expansion that can happen when you have raving fans. Okay, some other reasons why you might want to charge more. Of course, this is no news. It's like we're all witnessing hyperinflation in full effect. I don't want to sound scary, but we see gas prices, we see food prices. The cost of living, the reality is it's going up for everybody. It's like the rising tide kind of phenomenon. And so in order for our services to continue to support our business overhead, which we'll talk about, and to support our lifestyle, we may need to adjust our pricing, even just to compensate for that force, for that influence. And lastly, if you charge more, you can mitigate a tremendous amount of risk. You can mitigate the burnout patterns that a lot of people experience. Okay, so I'm just going to mention that this risk part, this is something that I actually got from a Megan Walker webinar just last week. She's actually running this series. She's promoting a really nice, what looks to be a really nice kind of like a summit event in November. I don't mind name dropping her. I think she's a great resource for folks in our field. But what happens when we take on a patient is we put in a lot of work in the beginning, kind of doing initial assessments, intakes. You may put in like 3 to 5, even 8 hours of work, just bring somebody into your services to kind of like get a handle on their case. And what happens if they don't come back for the second appointment? That was a pretty major loss. If you charge $200 for that appointment and you put in 8 hours, what is that? You're basically made $25 an hour for that, right? So there's a tremendous amount of front-loaded risk. If you charge more, then they'll likely be more committed to continuing, or better yet, if you charge for a packaged program or a set of services, if you're able to do that according to your licensure, then that's another way to mitigate that risk. So Katrina's got her hand up. I want to, what you got for us, Katrina? Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
The chat is disabled.
Oh, I'm so sorry, everybody. Okay, so let us see. That's going to be a little bit too much for me to juggle. So
okay, we'll just keep it all in the Q&A then.
Good call. Let's do the Q&A. All right, thank you for pointing that out to me. I'm ghosting everybody on the chats. Okay, here we go. So here's the question. This is really not to make anybody feel bad, but this is just a point of reflection. Are we projecting scarcity into our pricing, right? And so the reason why I say this is I see this a lot. I see this a lot with clients, and I've done this myself. It's like I've had to work through this. So are we projecting scarcity into pricing? These are the types of anxious thoughts that can come up around raising our prices. You may hear voices in your head and realize this may not be you. These are the voices in your head. Oh, they can't afford it. Oh, they'll never pay for it. They'll complain. They'll think I'm all about money. Have you ever had these thoughts when you're considering raising, if you've considered raising your prices? Have you experienced that? I know I have, and I know a lot of other people have as well. So what we can do, this is a simple Jedi mind trick. When we witness those thoughts, being the witness, when we're a witness to those thoughts, we can question them. We say, is that so? Oh, they can't afford it. Is that so? Oh, they won't pay it. Is it so? Just by asking that question, by questioning our own thought processes, we can break out of this scarcity cycle. Okay, so can they afford it or can they not afford it? Maybe it's true. So is it so? Yeah, it's true, because those people I just talked to last week, they said they can't afford it. So that's why I know they can't afford it. Well, I would still question that. I'm going to talk about the difference between value sensitivity and price sensitivity. And just because someone says they can't afford it doesn't necessarily mean they can't afford it. If you look at what else they're paying, what else they're doing with their money. So this is where pricing meets marketing. We want to make sure that if we raise our prices, we want to make sure that we're talking to the people who can afford our services, right? And so, you may feel called to serve certain populations, and I respect and I admire that. I'm deeply involved with charity work myself, but just bear in mind that positive cash flow is what allows us to increase our impact and be philanthropic and be charitable ourselves. So, if you keep a low margin on your services so that you can give back, just be very conscious about that and intentional. And I'm going to give you some exercises later to help you make sure that you're meeting ends meet financially, that you're covering your costs. But I suspect, and I see this a lot, there are probably a lot of people in your services who probably could afford to pay more if they understood clearly the transformation they were going to experience through your services straight up. So making sure part of this is communicating through our marketing, our messaging, through our sales conversations, what that transformation is as well. Getting in front of the right people, communicating the transformation. Okay, so I want to share a geeky little spreadsheet here for you. It's really just a demonstration. to show you how powerful this really is. I'm going to do some Zoom gymnastics, shuffle my screens. Katrina, let me know. Can everybody see this right now, the pricing diagnostic?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so let's just take, for example, a clinic. All right, I'm gonna reset everything. Pretend you didn't see that. If you are a small, solo clinician, you're building your practice, you're bringing in, let's say, $75,000 a year right now for your clinic, and you're considering increasing your prices. Now, referring back to what Megan Walker is talking to her people about, there's a lot of people talking about pricing right now. She's recommending everybody increase their prices by 30%. Okay, let's see what that looks like. When I think 30%, that's a pretty big jump. It's a pretty big jump, right? I would say it's certainly possible. Okay, so just by that move alone, if you don't lose any of your patients or any of your clients, guess what? You've just added $22,500 to your bottom line for the year. And think about this. When you adjust your prices, it doesn't require any other effort for your business. Other ways of bringing money into your business are maybe provide more services to existing clients, right? That means you need to do more work to provide those services and deliver. Okay, what's the other way to bring money into your business? You could find more clients, bring in new clients, right? Well, in order to bring in new clients, you may have to put in for marketing efforts. You may have to be on social media and work it. You may have to put money into Google ads or Facebook ads or, into marketing materials. That costs money. That costs energy and work, right? So by adjusting our prices, it doesn't actually require any extra work. So there's no extra cost. So you're immediately adding $22,500 to your bottom line just with that pricing increase alone. Now, bear in mind, not all of your patients may enroll with you at that new price. Okay, so let's anticipate that, okay, maybe 1 out of 10 of your patients really legitimately can't afford 30% more. So they might drop away. Okay, so we'll say 10% price, 10% loss of your patient base as a result of increasing your prices by 30%. If you're bringing in $70,000 a year, this 30% price increase still has you making $12,750 more per year. And guess what? You're actually seeing less patients as a result of that, which gives you more time. And maybe you're less likely to burn out. Maybe you're more likely to get better results with the people who you are serving, right? And maybe they're going to do the marketing for you. So this can be a profitable decision in both direct and indirect ways. I hope everybody's seen this. Okay, so that's powerful. And you can play with, if you're a clinic, if you're a group practice, say you're bringing $450,000 per year, let's say you just do 10%. And just from a 10% increase, and Megan Walker talks about even just 10% as a baseline. If you don't do anything else, just increase your prices by 10%. I doubt you're going to lose anybody because everything's increasing right now, right? And if you do lose some people, it will probably be minimal. Let's say that you lose, let's say 2 out of 100 fall away. Immediately, just from that alone, if you have a group practice and pulling in $450,000 per year, you're bringing $35,000 of profit into your business per year. And that's profit. If you own the business or you own the business with partners, that's money that could be going into yours or y'all's pocket at the end of the year, at the end of the day, right? So that's how, what could you do with an extra $35,000? Yeah, I think you could probably think of something. At the very least, you could be charitable, right? So income equals impact, right? I get that from Sachin Patel. I'm just parroting what all the great experts are saying, honestly, but I'm packaging it up for you. Hopefully this is valuable for you. I'm going to zoom back to my other screen. And here we go. Doing a little shuffle. Okay. So this is a way that you can improve your profitability. And again, it's a way to win back your freedom. Okay, so let's break down the numbers because we can look at, $10,000 extra on the bottom line, $30,000 extra on the bottom line. Let's break it down to see what this actually means. If the lifetime value of a client. Lifetime value is a metric for your business of, if your average patient stays with you for 5 or 7 years, and maybe, they might pay $200 per appointment on average, and say they see you for 10 appointments on average over the course of that 5 to 7 years, the lifetime value of your client, your patient, would be about $2,000. And let's say that you have some overhead to run your business. So let's say that 1,000 of those dollars is profit. So what that means is you only need 10 clients to pay for, say, a $10,000 international trip for your family. Or it may only take 100 clients for you to make a $100,000 down payment for your home, right? Now, with a pricing increase, if you increased your prices by 30%, the lifetime value of your client goes up from $2,000 to $2,600. And here's what's interesting. Your profit goes up in a much higher proportion than what you raise your prices by. You raised your prices by 30%. And here we're seeing the profit is actually going up by 60%. See that? Your profit went up from $1,000 to $1,600. So that means you could get 6 new patients to pay for that $10,000 trip with your family to somewhere beautiful in the world. You could see 63 clients to pay for a $100,000 down payment for your home. So maybe that down payment for your home takes 2 years instead of 3 years to save up for, or, depending on how busy your practice is, maybe in 1 year. Okay, so affording, let's dig into what it means to afford something and the implications of that. Because I know all of us here as a health or wellness professional, probably, I shouldn't assume, but most of us here probably have a story of resourcefulness. How do I know that? Because we all had to at some point pay for our education. We may be graced with a family member who could support our education. That's awesome if that happened. But if we had to pay our own way or take a loan, then what essentially happened is we paid for something that we could not afford. Why? Because we knew that we needed that for something, right? When we're talking about investing in our health education, we wanted to become something. We wanted to experience a transformation. And it's something that we didn't really feel like we could live without. We're willing to go into debt and, maybe multiple 6 digits of debt in order to make that happen, right? And we knew, you probably had some faith that you could pull that off and pay that off in due time. So we all have stories of resourcefulness. And I even have stories of resourcefulness in paying for my own naturopathic care. I had to see a naturopath for some health problems I was experiencing 10 years ago. I couldn't afford it, but I found a way to make it work because I knew that that was what I needed. Okay, so your patients have an opportunity like that. If you're able to successfully illustrate the transformation that you're offering and how that can benefit them, they're more likely to come to see the value and more likely to be willing to pay the price that you're putting on that transformation. So this is a little bit about pricing mindset. Pricing is the art of assigning a dollar amount to a perceived value. And it's a little bit troubling because we're talking about perceptions, right? Which are inherently subjective. So where to start? The typical model for most service professionals, and I would say probably most service professionals in the health and wellness space especially, is that we're trading time for money. We charge an hourly rate, typically. Now, that's understandable and logical to some extent, but I'd like to illustrate some of the flaws of that methodology of pricing. And in order to do that, I'd like to present an alternative way of looking at it, which is value pricing. If you go to the accounting world or some of these under the consulting world, you'll come to learn some of these other concepts that consultants and accountants and other service professionals, knowledge professionals are using in order to avoid this burnout model of trading time for money. So in value pricing, the essential concept is we're basing the value or the price on outcomes rather than inputs. So when we talk about an outcome, we're talking about the tangible results. We're talking about the transformation. that occurs as a result of someone going through our services rather than inputs. So inputs would be the time that you spent to deliver that service or the efforts that it took to deliver that service. So as, a functional wellness professional, I'm going to show you one of the flaws here. That as a functional health professional, you might be able to deliver much better results for somebody in a much shorter period of time. Now, the question is, does that make your services less valuable? I would argue no. In fact, I would argue that actually makes your services more valuable because they're coming to you because they couldn't find answers anywhere else. How many hours did they spend researching? How many hours did they spend seeing other medical professionals who really couldn't give them an answer that might have even been recommending kind of what I call bogus treatments? I don't want to get controversial here, but I think you know what I'm talking about. So you're not a commodity. A commodity is in our industry would be, let's take the example of, and I don't want to knock this, but the perfect example would be a doctor who only has 15 minutes allotted per checkup or follow-up appointment. And at the end of that 15 minutes, they're rushing through. They're not taking much time to listen, right? And they might even be barely engaged. Who knows? Are they even making eye contact? Sometimes, right? So sometimes people have that experience with doctors out there. And at the end of that 15 minutes, you see their hand on the doorknob, ready to go, trying to get out of that conversation, maybe turning over their shoulder, trying to wrap it up, rushing through. So that would be a commodity health care service. You're not a commodity. You're offering a transformation. You're likely often in a position where you're scheduled for a 45-minute follow-up. You might be going over that 45-minute follow-up pretty consistently. You schedule a 30-minute follow-up, you end up going way over because you're doing whatever it takes. You're doing what it takes to create that transformation for your client. So I think we should price accordingly. That transformation is invaluable and it's sacred. Okay, so this question, are your clients price sensitive or are they value sensitive? Right. So when we think price sensitive, and this distinction, I got this from Mark Richardson, one of my accounting mentors. Are your clients the type of folks who are cutting coupons out of the newspaper and saving them in the drawers of their kitchen and bringing them in stacks when they go grocery shopping? That's someone who's truly price sensitive. They're only going to buy the lowest cost product on the shelf. Is that your client? Is that your ideal client? I really don't think so. I don't think so. So, or are they value sensitive? So if someone says, I can't afford that, what kind of coffee are they drinking? Are they going to Starbucks? Starbucks is not the cheapest coffee. They're value sensitive. They're not price sensitive. It's not even the best coffee, interestingly, right? Yet they're able to charge for other reasons. They've created a brand name for themselves. So are they driving a Subaru? Are they driving a BMW? Are they driving a Honda? Are they driving a Prius? Right? What are they driving? Are they may not be driving the most inexpensive car. Are they driving a Chevy? Are they driving a Ford? Are they driving a used vehicle? So that's a statement. They're choosing something because they see the value in it. Okay, are they using an Apple phone, an iPhone? iPhones are not the cheapest phone, right? They're value sensitive. They're not price sensitive. Is everybody seeing this? I hope you can see this. So when they say, I can't afford it, is that so? It may be time for us to revisit the value conversation of, well, what would happen a year from now if you didn't do anything about this? Or why are you coming to me right now? Right? So these are we don't have time to go into how to run the value conversation to help them realize the transformation, why that's needed in their lives. But if you can land that, you're going to increase the likelihood of landing and enrolling clients into pricing structure that's commensurate to the value that you're bringing. Okay, so here's some common pricing strategy mistakes. The most common pricing strategy mistake that I see people making is not having a pricing strategy. And that can come in a number of different forms. It could be just simply doing what's been done before by other people in the industry. It could be matching the competition, which is just kind of another variation of that. It could be not just matching the competition, but it could be actually looking at what the competition is doing and going slightly lower than the competition so that maybe it'll come to me instead of them. What ends up happening is this kind of race to the bottom where everybody's sacrificing their margins to try to find more clients. Everybody's losing. And guess what? The clients are losing too because they're not as invested. They're not as committed. They're not getting as great outcomes in general. Okay. So the reason why this is a mistake to compare ourselves to other businesses and what other businesses are doing, there's a couple things there. Are they doing a commensurate level of pricing for their services? Right? If they're underpriced, if their pricing has no pricing strategy, if it's out of whack, if they're not covering their costs, then you definitely don't want to mimic that. You don't want to follow in the same fate, right? So another thing here is like if you're a brick and mortar clinician and you got overhead, you got rent, you got utilities, you got these other things that you're paying for. You can't compare yourself to somebody who's a telemedicine practitioner who's working out of a home office. It's apples and oranges. That person's going to have a very light overhead. So your pricing is going to need to take that into account. We'll get into that as well. So this is the going rate fallacy. A lot of folks believe that there's a going rate in the industry, and I'll challenge that. There's always going to be a statistical average. There's always going to be a statistical median of where things are at, across the spectrum of what people are doing. But is that really meaningful? And I think it's typical, especially if you're looking at naturopathic doctor clinics. Folks will say, yeah, naturopathic doctor, depending on where you're at, it's probably going to be about 300 an hour. Okay. Yeah, there's definitely an average out there. But I want to help you see things from another perspective. This is a study from Rupa Health that surveyed 41 different naturopathic doctor practices in San Francisco. And what they found is prices can really dramatically differ. They found that there's a really wide range, which is significant to also map out if we're looking at statistics. That, it ranged from, folks charging $100 an hour all the way up to $750 per hour. Okay, so they found that there was an average. It was about $295. But again, we don't necessarily need to compare ourselves to the average. I think it's valuable to have a benchmark to compare a little bit. But I think it's even more valuable to know ourselves, to know our businesses, to know our numbers and understand our needs. So this is where I suggest that we start. And at that point, we can compare ourselves to ourselves. We can build on our own successes. We can identify where things are maybe a little bit amiss and improve ourselves. It's just like a track athlete. I'm not going to compare myself to someone running a 4-minute mile. What's the point of that? It's like, I want to see okay, I ran a 6-minute mile last week. Let's see if we can get that down to 5:55, right? And then maybe in a month, I'd like to get it down to 5:30, right? So I think this is in general just a healthier way to live as well. So part of knowing ourselves, knowing our numbers in our business is understanding direct costs and indirect costs. Now, let me break this down to you. I'm getting into a little bit of some accounting concepts here, but I think it's important for you as an entrepreneur to have an understanding of how this works in our business. Okay, so a direct cost would be something that you use directly in the delivery of your services. Perfect example would be an acupuncturist. What's an acupuncturist use in their acupuncture treatments, right? Needles. So needles, they're disposing those needles after those appointments, typically. And so the cost of those needles would be considered a direct cost or cost of goods sold. Some people abbreviate that and they call it COGS, C-O-G-S, cost of goods sold, right? Here we're talking about cost of services, which is basically another variation of direct cost. So if you hired, say, you're doing IV services, IV procedures, and you're hiring like an IV technician to run that so you can focus on other things. The cost of that employee's hourly rate would be a cost of services. So that's a direct cost. That's direct labor, we call it. So then you have your indirect costs. Indirect costs would be your overhead. For instance, you consider your rent, your utilities, your, pay for your accounting fees and your marketing. All of that would be indirect costs. Let's say, for example, to make it really simple, you are paying about $1,000 per month in overhead with all of that stuff put together. If you had 100 patients in a month, then the cost per appointment, this is a key metric, is about $10. So I'm going to show you how to break down that metric in the next slide. But I want you to see that the price of your services minus the indirect costs and minus the indirect costs leaves you with the profit, what's left behind after all that is said and done. So again, this is a key metric. I think you all want to go home, or you're not going to go home. You're probably, or wherever you are, at some point later in the day, take a moment and figure out what your overhead per visit is. So you want to, again, take your average monthly overhead, those overhead expenses, not the direct costs, and divide that by the average number of visits per month to find out what your average overhead per visit. If you get confused on that, I'll show you how to reach out. Happy to have a chat with you and walk you through it. So here's a quick example. If you are, this is a therapy procedure that Ayurveda practitioners might use. If you're doing the Shirodhara therapy, which is a beautiful therapy, it's using warm oils, and you're charging $90 for that. And let's say you're using quite a lot of oil. So it's like $35 potentially of oil. Let's just use that for example. And your overhead with all the equipment and the space that you're renting is about $20 per appointment, per 1 hour appointment. That leaves you with $35 profit that you can potentially take home. And bear in mind, you still need to pay taxes on that. So it's going to actually be less. So, and you probably want to be saving some money for cash reserves in your business as well. So it's going to be even less than that. So $90 may seem like, yeah, okay, $90, it seems like a lot, but what's left is it's really not that much. You're really not making that much money for your services. So a correction in our pricing on that might look more like $150 as a price point, same cost of oil, same overhead costs. All of a sudden, by correcting the pricing on the service, you're now taking home $100 profit for that 1 hour service, which may still not be enough for you depending on your lifestyle needs, depending on the needs of your business, right? So that's just an example to see how that works and how dramatic of a change you can make just from a pricing readjustment. So finding comfort and ease with pricing, I'd like to share with you some ways to work through some of the resistance that you might be experiencing, some of the friction. If emotions come up, if discomfort comes up, there are some exercises that we can do at any point, at any time, during any day. And the most simple one is what Barry Tesler calls the body check-in. This is kind of like one of these somatic exercises, somatic techniques. Somatic means pertaining to the body. So we're actually feeling in to the sensations of our body, just like you might do in a yoga class. If your yoga instructor is saying, okay, and feel into your feet and just notice how your feet are contacting the floor. Feel into your chest and feel into your shoulders. Just notice if you're carrying tension in any way. So these are different directed movements in the body check-in. A more loose, non-directed movement would just be to take a moment, pause, maybe take a deep breath, and just notice what's going on in your body right now. And just kind of check in. When I check in here, I just notice, okay, my heart, something's a little bit going on there. I'm talking with a number of people here in this room. I'm a little bit excited, maybe a little bit nervous, maybe a little bit, my heart's a little bit tired because I've been up late for a couple nights in a row. Just noticing that. Yeah. And so if I'm experiencing discomfort with my pricing, noticing how is that landing in my body? What sensations am I feeling tension in my shoulders? Does something like lock up? Do I feel a lump in my throat? Do I feel like a pit in my stomach? What are you noticing when this discomfort comes up? And just taking pause, giving that time and space. And by doing that, we're allowing our awareness to metabolize those uncomfortable emotions. And if our awareness never has a chance to metabolize those uncomfortable emotions, guess what? They're probably going to stick around for a while. They're probably going to keep stuck. And you might not be able to get out of that unstuck feeling around your pricing. So body check-in, that is hopefully something that you can now apply if you haven't already been doing it at any point. You can actually do that within and during a pricing conversation. You can notice, just like I did right now with, you can do that in a webinar. You can do that when you're talking to a patient. You can do that in any moment in time, just becoming present, noticing what's going on. So the second exercise is a little bit more intellectual. This is, we're calling this the inventory of educational assets. This is something that you can go home. I keep saying go home and do as if you're like here in a classroom with me. Let's just pretend. So when you go home from class today, you can go home and write down all the trainings that you paid for since your undergrad education. Write down each one. And next to each one of those lines on a paper, right, how much each one of those trainings or certifications or degrees, how much each one of those cost. And then one more next to that, write down how much time went into the efforts you put in to acquire that degree, that certification, that training, whatever it was, right? And what I find when I do this with my coaching clients, those who are on my business lifestyle design program or folks who have gone through my courses, they come through that and they realize, wow, I got to be charging more for my services. Like looking at tens and sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars that went into this and all that effort. So I encourage you, that can be very eye-opening, and it's helped many of my folks realize that, yeah, it's time for me to charge more. So would love to hear from you if you'd like to reach out. One sneak peek into a resource that I'm going to be sharing with you. This is a tool for lifestyle pricing. Pricing your services based on your needs. If you have a family, basing that on your family's needs. Here we go. Jumping screens here. I know we're just at 2 minutes. I'm going to honor everybody's time. I know everybody's busy. Here we go. So this is actually what we can work on together. If you book a strategy call, we can use it just for this to help you dial in exactly what, not exactly, but a rough benchmark of where your pricing needs to be in order for you to support a lifestyle that is satisfying. So this first step in this worksheet, Katrina, if you don't mind sharing the link for this tool, you already did?
No, I have an issue.
Oh.
I can't, if I put it in chat, only the two of us can see it.
Okay, so I'm going to do a follow-up email. I'm going to give in that follow-up email, I'm going to send it out later today, that you're going to see both the chat and you're also going to see the tool. So we're kind of, flying in the air here, making adjustments, going to make it work for y'all. So this is going to be blank when you see it, but I just filled in some example numbers. Let's say just to survive, you need $3,000 per month. Based on, you would actually be itemizing each one of these things, how much you need for vehicle fuel per month, how much you need for travel, how much you need for clothing or food or house and utilities. So just a quick and dirty way of doing this. Let's say you need $3,000 to survive. You need $6,000 to have a comfortable lifestyle. And let's say you would love to bring home $10,000. And that would be allowing you to live a really expansive lifestyle that, you don't really have to worry about money. You don't have to say no to your kids when they want something important or that kind of thing. So you want to put in this step 2 of the sheet, this monthly business overhead, your monthly expenses. So these would be monthly expenses for your business. Like that could be your Zoom account, that could be the other software, the EHR, various apps, rent, if you pay rent, that kind of thing. And then your annual expenses, things you pay once a year, like your malpractice insurance, or what else would be an annual, like your licensure, those things. Okay, so what that's going to give you is on the sheet, you're going to plug in how many appointments on average you can take at capacity per week. And based on that, you're going to see, okay, I could do 20 appointments per week at capacity. You're going to see that, and this is a really rough benchmark. This is actually, our business overhead is generally going to be much higher than this. Okay, so let's make it a little more realistic. Okay, if you had 20 appointments per week, and you're totally full, in order to have that expansive income, you would really only need to be charging $150 per hour. Not bad, huh? But let's say that you're actually not at capacity. You're only at half capacity right now. So even if you wanted to live a comfortable income, you'd have to be doing about $200 an hour at half capacity. Of course, when you go up to full capacity, you're going to get more profit from that, which you can reinvest into your business, into your training and other things. But what this is saying is that for you even to meet your survival needs at 10 appointments per week, you need to be at least charging $123 an hour. Now we can go much deeper into this. There's some nuances. If you have other revenue streams, like if you have rentals, if you're doing consulting work on the side, you can put that here and that factors into it. Let's say you get $1,000 a month from teaching income or something like that. That factors into the whole equation. You'll see something different. Now, again, book a strategy call with me if you'd like to dig into this worksheet and apply it to you and your business. And I'd be happy to walk you through it. It can be super valuable. And again, this is just a benchmark. It's not going to tell you, it's not like a spit out, like this is what your prices need to be, but it's a starting point. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate you taking the time to be here with us. I'm just going to close with a quick quote from Hiro Boga, one of my famous coaches. She's a well-known business coach. That's just, I always find myself really touched by it. I like her style, and I think you will too. The key here is the business, developing our business, becoming profitable. That's really not the goal. That's not the point. Your business is the container for your sacred purpose here in this world as a healer, because we all know, we all see it. The world needs a ton of healing, and your business needs to be well. Your business needs to be healthy in order for you to be effective in your practice. So essentially, pricing is an opportunity for self-awareness, self-expansion. It's an opportunity for growth, to be able to dig deep and know ourselves, to work through those discomforts. And okay, so I finally pulled up my quote from Hiro Boga here, and then we'll cut it. Okay, so here we go. Business is a sacred container for creative growth and transformation. It offers support for our lives and for those of the people we love. It gives us the opportunity to expand into our fullest, most vibrant selves, and to do the work that we're called to do. It challenges us to release old stories about who we are and what we are capable of, and to shape new ones that expand our inner being so that we can inhabit and incarnate all who we are. So thanks for coming. Appreciate you taking this hour out of your day to spend time with me and Katrina here. Again, feel free to reach out, schedule a call with me, or let me know by email how this landed for you. I'd love to hear it. Look forward to talking with you soon, and hope you all have a wonderful rest of the week. Bye-bye for now. Thanks again.